Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to never miss a video from us.
Hello and welcome to the Expert Interview Series, and today we are thrilled to have Mr. Bas Dijkstra, a seasoned test automation trainer, consultant, speaker and avid cyclist. With over 17 years of experience, Bas is a leading figure in the field of test automation, helping teams elevate their testing efforts through the strategic application of tools and techniques. Throughout his extensive career, Bas has spearheaded numerous successful projects, from developing and maintaining robust test automation solutions to executing comprehensive automation strategies. His expertise extends beyond training and consulting, as he also offers corporate mentoring services aimed at nurturing aspiring automation engineers. Bas is the driving force behind RestAssured.net, a widely acclaimed library for simplifying HTTP API testing in C#. Welcome to the Expert Interview Series, Bas, and hope our viewers get to learn from your experiences.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for having me, Pooja. Like so many testers in general, I sort of kind of fell into the job. I have a computer science background, which over here in the Netherlands makes me a bit of an outlier in the software testing field. So I know in a lot of countries, a lot of people in testing tend to have a computer science background.
Yeah.
Over here in the Netherlands, people have all kinds of backgrounds, but not very often do they have a computer science background.
Oh.
But I did. So when I was 12, I always said, well, I want to be a computer programmer. Yeah, so, and that's why I went to university, started using computer science, and then realized maybe I want to be a computer programmer, but I'm not very good at it, and I'm not really enjoying doing just programming.
Okay.
So I started out my working career after that with something completely unrelated to software testing and software development. But then I got into touch with someone who worked at a company that over here in the Netherlands is pretty famous pretty well known in the area of software testing. And they said, well, maybe you should interview with them. So that's what I did. And I sort of kind of fell into testing. This was in 2006. So a couple of years ago. And then I suddenly sort of kind of got introduced to automation, which looked like software development, but was still related to testing. I thought, that's an interesting mix. So that's both software testing, which I really liked, and then it's also software development, which I said I was going to do when I was 12. So that came together quite nicely, and that's how I ended up in automation, really. So what I love about the field of test automation, that it's a little bit of everything. So you do software testing, you do a lot of software development as well, and you get to talk to lots of different people, lots of different companies. So that's what's kept me going. That's a good question. A lot and nothing at all.
Oh, okay.
So of course, a lot about automation has changed. So when I started out, you really only had a couple of tools. You had these commercially licensed tools that promised to be able to do everything.
Okay.
So over the years, the tools definitely have changed. There's many more tools now. The whole open source thing is much bigger than it was in 2006. And so that has changed. A lot of tools have gotten better, absolutely. And also our approach to our perspective of test automation in general has changed a lot. So when I started out, a lot of it was, we have a bunch of test scripts, a bunch of regression test scripts. We want to automate everything. You go automate everything. We'll put you there in the corner. Please don't talk to any other people. Please don't ask too many questions.
Okay.
Just let us know when you're done.
Oh.
So that was the approach that people took to automation back then. Unfortunately, I still sometimes encounter teams and organizations that look at automation that way. But overall, a lot has definitely changed, and people see automation now much more as part of the software development and software testing process, as a means to support testing, support testers rather than replace them, which I think is a much, much healthier way to talk about and think about automation and about tools when you're testing. So that has definitely changed.
Okay.
But then again, a lot of it has stayed the same. So we are still using tools to support our testing. We still make the mistake of starting out with the most difficult type of automation there is, which is end-to-end full stack automation through a graphical user interface.
Okay.
So that unfortunately hasn't really changed. And I still see people, unfortunately, talking about how automation is like a step up in their career from what people call manual testing. So unfortunately, that hasn't really changed a lot. So, but it's still testing, and it's still using tools to help support our testing. How much time do we have?
For the interview?
So this is there's so many. I'm saying that because there's so many of them.
Okay.
I did a talk about this 2 days ago.
Okay.
So let me pull. Unfortunately, that was it was recorded, but it's all in Dutch, so it's not very useful for a big part of your audience, probably. But let me pull some of so that was about all of the lessons that I've learned in the last almost 18 years.
Okay.
And some of them are, let me just paraphrase some of them.
Okay.
And the first one that I introduced there is, please don't do test automation after the fact. So I see a lot of teams still that say, well, we've been doing this testing, and especially our regression testing, for months now. We've all done that manually. It's boring, takes a lot of time. Nobody really wants to do it. So let's bring in automation to solve that problem. In itself, that's not a bad idea, but it comes with some problems and challenges of its own. And the first one is that all of these scripts are written by humans for humans, which means they're interacting with an application from an outside perspective, often through the graphical user interface, which is notoriously hard to automate. So if you just try to replicate what's in a test script like that, you're almost always going to make a mess out of it.
Okay.
Just because, well, you're only using an interface that's not really... it's the only interface in an application that's specifically written to be consumed by a human being, not another piece of code. So before you start automating your regressions, you should break up those regression scripts and analyze them and see, well, what is it that I'm really testing here? How can I get that information in the most efficient way? And then see, well, do I really need the graphical user interface each and every time for each and every step? So, and that's a lot of work. So before you can even start automating, then there's the fact that if you're starting to automate scripts or trying to test code that's been written 6 months, 2 years, whatever, at some time in the past, people have moved on. And the whole discussion about how can we most efficiently test this, how can we make this testable, how can we make it easier for us to automate this, you're way too late to that. Nobody wants to go back to 6-month-old code and say, well, how can we make it easier for us to test this? So that's another challenge. And I'm just thinking what are some of the other ones that I addressed. It's only 2 days ago. So then there's the whole, should you really hire automation engineers to do this and make them work separately from the software testing and software development team? I don't think that that's a very good approach either. Okay. Because, well, they're working in a silo, and I don't really think that that's a good idea. So what I love to do these days is come into a company and work with the testers and also with the developers to say, well, sure, we want to introduce automation to the development process, or rather, we want to improve your current automation efforts, because most teams and companies by now will have some form of automation in place already. Right. And they tend to bring me in to take the next step, so to say, or improve, because they feel like they're stuck, or they don't get out of it what they want to get out of it. So what I love is just coming in, working with the testers and developers to say, well, how can we improve this? And what's required to do that? And maybe part of it is running some workshops or training courses. A lot of it is typically working together with them, doing a lot of pair programming, pair testing, those kinds of things to just improve their testing and automation efforts. It's basically just a productized service. So I've been doing this for a while now, and it's mostly just making it easier for potential clients to understand what it is exactly that I'm doing, which again, like I said before, is coming into a company and I'm working with a small group of testers to help them either take the first steps in their automation journey, because there's lots of testers that say, well, I want to get into automation, but I don't really know how. So they can benefit greatly from someone who comes in and takes those first steps with them. So they typically say, well, there's so much information out there, I don't really know where to start. Okay. And I can help them with that. So that's the whole driver behind the corporate mentoring service, is working with them for a couple of hours per week in their own context, which is a very, very, very important part of the whole story and of the benefits. It's in their own context, because there's so many training courses out there, including my own, but there's lots of training material out there on the internet, on Udemy, Pluralsight, Test Automation University, which is fantastic. There's lots and lots of fantastic content out there on the internet for free, paid for, or you can bring in a trainer, which is definitely helpful. It can definitely be helpful too. But the biggest challenge is, what are you going to do after that course, after consuming that content? And that corporate mentoring service is meant to, I was going to say bridge the gap, but avoid the gap altogether by just working with them within their own context, in their own applications, with their own technology stack, because that typically makes it a lot easier for people to directly apply what they learn into their own context. And we typically write our first tests. Okay, they're often fairly straightforward tests, but we write them, bring them under version control, make them part of a CI build within the first couple of days. I used to be that consultant, between air quotes, who came in with a tool under their arm and say, well,
you are going to use this because this is what I know. It's all I know. I'm not going to tell you that that's all I know, but this is what I know, and this is the best tool out there for you. I know nothing about you, but this is the tool that you should use.
Right.
I've been that consultant, and I hate it, looking in retrospect. Because, well, my personal preference, my personal favorites might not be what works best for you. So the first step is, well, what would work for you?
Okay.
What would fit into your technology stack, into your development process? What would be a good fit for the level of experience and the skills level of the people who need to do the work after I'm gone? And I don't really care about the programming language or the types of tool, as long as it's the best fit for what my customer, because they are going to have to use that tool. Hopefully, they are going to use that tool for a long time after I've stopped working with them. So I've been a user of RestAssured, so the Java RestAssured, for a long time now.
Okay.
And over the last couple of years, I started working, and I talk a lot and I teach a lot about API and all different kinds of topics around API testing.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a lot of people use RestAssured. I'm a heavy RestAssured user myself.
Mm-hmm.
But over the last couple of years, I started working more and more in C# and .NET environments.
Okay.
So what I was looking for is a library that helps me make it easier to write tests, because that's what I think RestAssured does very, very well. It abstracts away a lot of boilerplate code, which makes it very easy to just focus on writing the tests. But RestAssured isn't very useful. The Java RestAssured isn't very useful if you're working in a C# context. So, and I found myself working with lots of with various clients that have C# backend, C# code bases, and said, well, let's look at something that makes it just as easy as RestAssured just for Java, but in the C# space, and I couldn't really find anything. So there's a couple of libraries in C#, most notably RestSharp, which is used very often to write tests. I love RestSharp. I'm not saying that RestAssured is better. I'm that better than RestSharp. I hate those discussions, by the way, about, oh, my tool is better than your tool. No. But RestSharp is a general purpose HTTP client,
Right.
not a library specifically written with writing tests in mind.
Right.
By the way, there's a reason RestSharp is downloaded millions of times, so they're doing something right. But it's a very easy to use, very powerful, general purpose HTTP client. I was looking for something that specifically helped me writing tests in the C# space more easily. I was also looking, before I started RestAssured Net, it's like almost 2 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
I did some other open source software development projects, some smaller projects, and I really liked doing that. So I was looking for something new,
Okay.
a new project. And then I thought, well, why not try and port RestAssured to C#?
Okay.
So I talked to the person who wrote that, to the guy who wrote the original RestAssured, and I said, well, I've been in touch with him for a long time. So I said, well, what do you think about this, Eddie? And he said, well, go for it. So yeah, that's sort of kind of how it started. I was just looking for a library that, again, helped me make it as easy as writing tests with RestAssured in Java, but in the C# ecosystem. Couldn't really find it, so I decided to write it myself.
Okay. So it was just a solution that you're finding, and finally something great came up.
Yeah, basically. So it's I saw something that wasn't there, and something that gave me the opportunity to do a little bit more open source software development, because there's lots of things to learn from that as well, from just writing, publishing, maintaining a package, dealing with issues, dealing with feature requests from people, working together with others on a library like that, which is you learn a lot of things from that as well. So plus, well, I saw something that, well, at least to my knowledge, wasn't really there, so I decided to build it. Keep in mind that one of the other lessons that I talked about the day before yesterday is, well, keep in mind that test automation is software development. But you're still in the world of software testing. You're still contributing to supporting software testing. So that's very, for me, that's very important to keep in mind. And like with basically all things in life, you could read blog posts and watch videos and take multiple choice tests until you're blue in the face, but you're only really going to learn by doing it, by building something, getting frustrated because it doesn't work, finding out the solution to those problems, and then step by step. It's really like a learning trough that you have to go through in order to improve and get better because of it. So a lot of it, please just start building things, show that to others, have others review it, build interesting things together. So that's I think the biggest thing. What I see keeping a lot of people say, well, but there's so many things, and where do I need to start? Just start somewhere, and build something, and learn from that. It's also the reason why I've started another open source project. Basically to give people some guidelines on how to learn it. I'll share the link to that. It's on GitHub. It's still work in progress, but it's just it's basically just text, but saying, well, if you want to learn more about test automation and you want to get hands-on, you want something to build, here's an idea about some of the things that you could build. And then going through that step by step, and setting up your first project, setting up your development environment, writing your first tests, bringing that on a version control, making that part of a CI build, and then using unit testing frameworks, an API testing library, a UI testing library, those things. And just to give people a little bit of guidance. It's all free, all open source. Again, it's not done yet, but the first couple of steps are available, so you get an idea for what it is or how it's going to look like. I'll share that link with you just after the interview, so you can put that in the show notes or some text that you send out together with the... I am horrendously bad at predicting trends and talking about trends. So that's a very hard question for me to answer. So I typically, the advice I give to people typically is don't worry too much about the trends. Don't spend too much. Sure, AI is a big one, for example. I don't spend a lot of time working with AI, and I do quite a bit of reading about AI, of course, and because it would be silly just to ignore it. But what I typically focus on is the fundamentals, because the fundamentals will not AI, and like automation, it's a tool that can help you do things in a more efficient way, but it comes with problems of its own. So is it going to replace everything that we do? Of course not. Is it going to change the way we work? Well, probably, just like automation did, just like computers did, just like the steam engine did, just like fire and the wheel, everything did.
Right.
So what I try and focus on is the fundamentals rather than running after the latest trends, but definitely keep an eye on what's happening, what other people who are experimenting with these things and learning about them, what they think, what they find, learn from that. It saves you a lot of time yourself. So that's what I typically do. I'm lazy that way sometimes. I'd rather have other people find out all about the problems and I write about that, and then I learn from them. So that's what I typically do. Myself, one of the technology things that I talk about a lot, have talked a lot about over the last couple of years, is contract testing.
Okay.
So that's something that you'll find me talk about pretty often. There's quite a bit of demand for workshops and talks about that. And the other one is API security testing, which I think is very important, a very important topic, because, well, APIs are basically driving the whole world and internet and everything around that is communicated via APIs. So, and we all want our data to be secure.
Right.
So diving a little bit deeper into API security testing is something I spend a lot of time doing these days, and also talking about running workshops, those kinds of things.
Thank you so much. It was really nice talking to you. It was a pleasure. We had so much to learn from you, and hopefully the viewers who are going to watch this have a lot of things to take in, a lot of learning experiences.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for being a wonderful host.
Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to never miss a video from us.